Let us cultivate the altruistic motivation seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating infinite, kind, mother sentient beings with that kind of bodhicitta motivation that we should all participate in this teaching.
Ani tambu ani kasinga tambu pa jagal ndo sani ani tandawa ni sumsa wan chu yungu mes labi bas
Just before I begin the teaching, I would just want to say a few words about my return early to the monastery. Remember that I told you that this time I would be gone for several months and would be returning in April, but here I am.
That's a younger vision. Say the Karesana Anita Ali Tambu Pachini, Pigajal Chini, Ani Japun, Ani Jayuna, Jigunashi, Ani Tanimakagi Serengala, Ani Yambet Sinju, getting Gambian Gata, say La Tempest, Taidam getting Gambian La Tempe, a Judy, that such a huge, that the any heat, and Yamakis and Yamasum Saxista, Yamasum Regal, they are Tosus.
So after I left with a group of students to Mount God, His Holiness, the first teaching was on what is called chanting the names of Manjushri. It's called Manjushri Namasangiti in Sanskrit. It's considered as a very profound and rare kind of tantric text. And His Holiness gave oral transmission and explanatory commentary on this wonderful text for some days at the Debung Losel Ling Monastic University in South India. The explanatory commentary in Tibetan called Sheti, I understood is kind of very rare on that particular text, chanting the names of Manjushri.
That the any marvel that Sanji Gamdi Sunk and do choose that got Sumbatel do Tanghani, no Tanghani than Mares.
And as you know, most of you know that Buddha's teaching can be classified into two kinds. One we call the Sutra Yana or Sutra Vehicle, which is about what we might call common discourses, and then there is Tantra Yana or Tantric discourse, which is for lack of better words, I guess in English, is the esoteric teaching of Buddha.
So that the Jugata, the Anha, the letter, remember years, you can nanita, they remember Tambu Nimbasumbati, Kanga told that those Panjin and the Hinanjus.
Yes. And Buddhist Tantra consists of 4 classes of Tantra, or 4 divisions of Tantra. And so His Holiness, when he was explaining this particular text, chanting the names of Manjushri, he was, kind of relating to all the 4 classes of Buddhist Tantra.
That's the Shaju the Mabata. Shuju the Nanju, the Nanjalami Jews, something those.
I think I need to correct myself that he was explaining this particular text relating to 3 classes of Buddhist Tantra, not the what we call action Tantra. So the remaining 3 Tantras would be Performance Tantra, and Yoga Tantra, and Maha-Anuttara Yoga Tantra, or the highest Yoga Buddhist Tantra.
Hati tola ane Pandin Lamok Anita Jenang Tendinasta Tanzu pe Yawashi pe Shishus.
And then after that explanatory commentary on Manjushri Namasangiti, then His Holiness also gave the minor initiation of Shri Devi or Pandit Lamo. So in those days I was just fine, so I was able to attend the teachings and the commentary.
Then Shinda Tambi January 60th, Shinda Tambi Seva Tunigani Gandhi Chazi Churagunji numbers.
After that, on January 6th, was the inauguration of Gandhin Sharzi Monastics debate courtyard. So His Holiness was invited for the inauguration. So Gandhin Sharzi Monastic College is from where I came from. So I belong to Gandhin Sharzi Monastery.
Kundi Chiginami Ninkante, Kurana Piginami Nigate, Gandhi Sharzi Kambota, that Kambo Subashi, and Tangunzu, Tangarashi, Tangunzu Gambaka, Penashin Yandusi, Naloya, dentistry piece. So the day we invited His Holiness to inaugurate our debate courtyard, so few of us, there was the current abbot of the Gandhin Sharzi Monastery, and then the former abbot, and then myself. So we were there to, I should say, traditionally, welcome His Holiness, with burning incense stick and so on, to the debate courtyard. So we were really very close with His Holiness, and His Holiness, blessed all of us, and it was very a fortunate day for all of us. So that the Kundi Gonzu de Zimchu, Zinchulia did the Shuente Ma Chinang Zane, only Chikali Yushin Takashi, Gonjit not that would say sorry, in Ma any things. They would not send anyone who might be sending her, but the Dinkan in the Takushin and the Labal Church.
So first we invited His Holiness to his special room, because we had a room built for him. So we came down, and we were waiting downstairs, where the real hall is. And so His Holiness came down, and so he walked to sit on his throne. So at that time, I was sitting on sort of a raised platform, and then I slipped, and I fell down, and so that's why I hurt my arm.
Hand. My arm.
Actually, his wrist. If you want to see, maybe I can show it to you.
I like this, is it? Oh, why is that? What's it like that? So make a bandage.
Yes.
Okay. And His Holiness the Kundugani Zigaris. You might give me Tadini Duxini, Yakosoni, Zixons.
So His Holiness knew about that, and he, called me twice to go and see him, and so he saw my condition.
And then Senga Ali pa dre di yul ani ta sungkyu nang re sungkyu nang di chane ani da di rade ko tol sungkyu ngana desitel ko hu yore sina ya ani ti rade ko tol nyen choba sen yang ngo hyu ni ya hyu begins.
So after the accident, I couldn't really go to Drepung Loseling to attend the teachings, but then I sent my request to His Holiness, if I could stay in my room and listen to his teachings through FM radio. And His Holiness, totally gave me the permission. So I just stayed in the room and listened to FM radio and received the remaining teachings.
Tati Drepung Loseling no ya teteris, ane yum jindi du sungtan drevaris.
No. And a major part of the teaching at Loseling afterwards was his commentary on what we called the wisdom gone beyond sutras, Prajna Paramita sutras. There are many different versions, so His Holiness was giving a major commentary on that. So that particular topic we call Prajna Paramita, or perfection of wisdom, we would study that for 7 years, at the monastic college.
So that the Zawatan she the Jagalam so Zeb in Devatani, Penchirumuchita, Perkalamaga, Zebin Devani with the dance sumbris.
And His Holiness, used two particular commentaries to give his teachings, and one was by a great Tibetan master, Tenzin Dorjee Gyeltsen, one of the other Penchins, and the other one was the great Indian master Haribhadra's commentary on the perfection of wisdom. Yes, I said Haribhadra, right? Yeah.
Kunigani Chatini Luxini Hosung, Gashi, Dangatsu Ali Losata, Losaka teaching to Degumi, so Jagal Kase, America, so Dogis, Hubi, then they can do Pachini, I want to carnations.
So when His Holiness personally asked me to see him twice, at that time I told His Holiness that I was thinking of going back to the States for a while, so His Holiness thought that was a good idea, and so that's why I decided to come back here.
That ring cutting upon the whole de Yasa de Matapi, the Chua Matapa, and they say that Chua Matapa Gonsu, the Giants.
Before I left, for India, where we stopped in this wonderful text, I think we talked quite a bit about impermanence, didn't we?
Sanji Kamdi and Tambo Sanji and Tambo Chungo Tambo Kodis and Mataba Suners, and he used Yang de Galam Mataba Suners. Time Mataba de pay Chu Dunkin Tangitan, Mataba de Mataba Gomna, and the Tambo Chul and Juba de Tishigori, but the Chun got Timber Tare, Jabo Chu Dubin Jabo de Honey, Mataba Gomni, that the any Jungueris, those sons, Kitchen was Kanando was.
Historical teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, his first teaching was on impermanence, or transient nature of life and things. And then when he performed the deed of passing away into parinirvana, his last teaching was on impermanence. So basically, what he was trying to communicate to us and teach us is this, that as spiritual practitioners, that we really need to pay attention to understanding and realizing what impermanence is. And so if we really understand and realize what impermanence is, at the beginning, it becomes a very motivating, powerful motivation to engage in spiritual path. In the middle, it really helps us to carry on with our spiritual practice, maintain our practice, and enhance it. And at the end, it really helps us to see the completion of our practice. So meditating on impermanence, realizing impermanence is considered as very instrumental in our spiritual development, from the beginning to the middle and to the end. So when we talk about impermanence, there are, if you like, two different levels. on which we can understand what it is. There is what we call the coarse form of impermanence. At a coarse level, there is an understanding of impermanence, and then impermanence at a subtle level. What does impermanence really mean, if you will, in the subtlest way or the sense? So when we talk about the subtle understanding impermanence, what it really boils down to is how everything changes from moment to moment. That's why we talk about momentary disintegration. So now when we think about ourselves coming here, at this gathering, we have really not remained the same person, so to speak. From the moment we entered here and the little bit of time we spent already here. So we have changed. You see, we have gone through many momentary changes already.
No.
So if we use the concept of time to understand it, let's say when we talk about 1 hour, we know 1 hour consists of 60 minutes. Then each minute consists of 60 seconds. But when we talk about subtle impermanence, it's subtler even than that. You see, subtler than the seconds that we are talking about.
Yes.
And all of us are really disintegrating or changing, you see, in every split of a second, So not only do we go through such what we call momentary changes, but even when we think in terms of our continuity as a person, as a self, that continuity itself is changing. It's not permanent either. When we look at coarse impermanence or examples, they are everywhere around us. We could probably more easily relate to them. When we look at how the seasons change, from winter to maybe spring to summer and so on, autumn. So all the seasonal changes, what they are really communicating and indicating to us is that nothing is really fixed. So at this moment, we can, yesterday is already gone. But we know yesterday existed, didn't we, right? But at this particular moment, yesterday is already past. And then when tomorrow comes, then today must cease to exist. Today couldn't exist, when the tomorrow comes. So today would be the past, when the tomorrow is here, So when we really think in those terms, what we're really saying is how time, is changing all the time. Through the time changes, we experience, yesterday, we experience today, we will experience tomorrow. Nothing is really fixed, transfixed, if you will. So what meditators do is, first maybe they deal with those examples, such as how the time is not fixed, it changes, how the seasons are changing from one to another. And through those examples, when we started to get a sense of understanding of what impermanence is, then the meditators, now they bring it home, so to speak, that understanding, and now they focus on their own life, and them as self or a person, how their life and everything that is related to them is in the state of flux. It is changing.
So rang message tola ani dring yakbo yen sani kan de yom da dring gonda kan de yom ya ko mare dring gonda da sani de ha kwai tan mevers.
So when we really look at a certain impermanence, we really cannot predict what is going to happen next. This very moment we could be feeling very fine, the life is so good. We really don't know what life will be a little later, maybe in the afternoon or in the evening. We cannot, And we don't know what will happen tomorrow. Is it going to be really beautiful and fine like now, or is it going to be something else?
kasi ni nga phando holam de ya maro sa tin do wa de.
So when I left for India, remember, I was just fine, So I didn't have that problem. Now that happened.
Ta nga zu changma lo. Je za nga zu changma lo. Bebo ti ki we kable chhe do ya te tengyu ya mares. Je za nga ba do te tengyu cha gu ya.
So the point I want to make is when life is going very smoothly and things are working fine with us, we have a tendency not to remember Dharma much. Life is good. So what really we need to tell ourselves is when the time is good, circumstances are good, we really need to think about Dharma.
So da mana jogi diwa mege sai mege le mang bu sa go de sai ate ta ban zi tang zi jo mata ba ta mata ba ti jin tan tang ge mata ba to bin sheba ti jin tan ge wes tang zi de she go res.
And one of the major reasons or the rationales, if you will, that why we find ourselves getting involved in a lot of negativities or negative karmic actions is just because in our mind we have what we call grasping at permanence of life. So we grasp at life as being permanent, and that grasping is completely the opposite of the perception or the understanding of life as being impermanent. So when we grasp at life as being permanent, and from that sort of ground upon which we are standing, if you will, then we find ourselves getting involved in indulging in many bad karmas.
So rang ji le ta ban se tang si ti wang ki rang ya bo yo de bu ji yo san tong ta me yin le te cha dang ki lo shi ta dang we ta che dang lo shi yo.
So as we grasp at permanence of our life, then, we kind of support that system, if you will, way of thinking. Then we want everything for that, self. So in the process, we find ourselves hurting others and doing a lot of negativities. Because in the process of making self happy, which we see as being very permanent, sort of everlasting, to make that everlasting self happy, then we go to the extent of doing everything possible, and in the process, we, create a lot of negativity. So that's how we hate others. We dislike others. If it means, getting the thing for the self that is seen as permanent, then I just go to the extent of, becoming very delusional, hating, disliking, and, you just name it, everybody else.
So that, chua matapate, mahipa insan, chua matapa yimate, mahipa insani, that tangzi wang rang yurumbo padia santong yurumbo devalata dandu nyen shong she de rang da patu ya ta nyen shong ya ta sanmo chadang sanmo buti ndi tole khoyung goris.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that when we look inside our mind, we really strongly grasp at the permanence of life. So that being our mindset, then we really plan as if we are going to live forever. Okay, so as a part of that blueprint plan we have got, so then now we got, divide people or the things into my friends and enemies, So now, you see, these other delusions pop up, like we are attached to, the ones we call dear and near ones, and we started to, dislike and hate those we see as enemies. And that's how we find our life being very, biased. We operate in all these biases that we indulge in activities out of attachment, out of anger, out of jealousy and everything. And that's how we are creating a lot of negativities.
So that rang ji tin de yurumbo de mabating about the shigurs. But then kadu she cho mata kadu yomi de ha ko yamas. Dan da tang lebu de tangbo yuan ya. Gonda tondu gonda ke remi ha ko. So we really
need to pay attention to understanding and realizing that our life is, as a matter of fact, truth speaking, it is impermanent. Okay, so we should not deceive ourselves thinking it is permanent, because one day it will definitely come to an end. That is called death, and that is certain. There's nothing mystery about it. There's nothing to discuss. It's going to happen for sure. But what we really don't know is when is that going to happen. So the time of death is uncertain. Okay? So that being the case, we can't be very sure that by this afternoon or the evening we will still be alive. We really think about the subtle impermanence of life. Anything could happen from this very moment until the afternoon or in the evening. See, so we really got to take that reality into consideration and how we function and how we, behave.
Yes. Rang message any nanki lot nangi ni sin pe kiki le pe tang kasi ka tanda tang debu jiwo yene te nanki lot nangi yin chani ka din jwa themi de ha ma go yin chen tende sam tang shin ni ani chue dipong ga chue gi ta diwa pa pong de gewa do yete ani tam chue ni song be ni ta dipong ga tu shi te ke chim bu.
So that's why in the Buddhist literatures we find so many examples given to illustrate what subtle impermanence is. And one of the examples being used is that our life is as ephemeral as the lightning that happens. A lightning will strike for a moment and that's just gone. So our life is that impermanent, if you will. And so if we really pay attention to that nature of our life, reality, and then engage in practice, what does our really practice involve? Our practice involves not doing the negativities and abandoning negativities and doing the positive actions, cultivating positive qualities. So as we understand life is impermanent, anything could happen anytime. So with that kind of awareness of impermanence of life, that we should conduct our life properly and do the practice properly. So now I'm going to return to where we left in this wonderful text called Miscellaneous Collection of Kadampa Geshe's Advices. And as I mentioned earlier, so we were, as a matter of fact, talking about impermanence.
Tati garizan tande gishi potowa la geni chiki chuji shawala shawalas kal kangche la shubes potowishan ne geni ji gedanga chu du is chu dubala ta ge chishu dubju chu dubju ge chishu karareska ya condition potowal gehi potowal geni ji
Geshe Potowa, one of great Kadampa Geshes, he was approached by Upasaka. Upasaka is a practitioner with layperson's vows in the footnote. And so this Upasaka asked him, said, I would like to know what is a really important thing, that one must consider to cultivate spirituality or to do practice. So in other words, if you rephrase it, what he was basically asking is, what is perhaps the most important thing that one must pay attention to if one is going to be a spiritual practitioner, if one is going to cultivate a spiritual practice. And Geshe Potowa said to him that if one truly cares about spiritual practice, one wants to practice it really as purely as it can be done, then realizing or understanding impermanence is central to that. Yes. Of course, I don't think the Upasaka asked for why that is the case, but anyway, Geshe Potowa started to give reasons why that that is important. So at the beginning, when we pay attention to and meditate on death and dying, impermanence of life, it really becomes a truly powerful motivational factor. It really motivates one to engage in the spiritual path.
다 바로도 가르쳐서는 게줄로 꾸이 Geshes 당보 바바들 가르쳐서는 랑게 아니 개와 두발아 아니 꾸자 땅이다 바꾸이 아니 Geshes 그래서 도시 그래서.
And in the middle, Geshe Bodhava says that understanding impermanence, it generates enthusiasm. That helps one to sustain one's spiritual practice. That one finds enthusiastically sustaining or maintaining one's practice in the middle process.
Good Geshe. Kare isn't any but any gradual of Kuwi changes. Round chain about Nascent of the data. Today, so in Tenzin and Chungchen and Hak was not that. They like any trip delay. Don't get the Tavi tubbed any trim to him ever that and sound on the good Joshua.
So how is that? Let's say once we are pursuing our practice, we encounter many difficulties and challenges. For example, said that the sickness, comes to us, but at such time, we really become more interested. What brings us the sickness? What is the real cause behind that? Okay, so we want to free ourselves completely from sickness for good. And when we really look at the real source of sickness and other problems we encounter in life, then we find ourselves truly interested in cultivating the method or the means by which we can free ourselves from such difficulties, for good. So that's how you sustain your enthusiasm and your practice in the middle phase.
Yes. So the Dayang and the Tangle was. When the Nasa of the show and an impairs and the Taru was the song to wish.
So now we could be thinking that, if I get sick, there are such things as medications. So if I pop in a pill into my mouth, that'll take care of my sickness. So what is really the big deal, about that?
Time you tell a trap of me, Nick where that Nasa tied you so you are the Tar Taduga, Nasa to Mabasans or 2 Yamaris.
We are not denying the efficacy of medications available to us that help us to cure our sicknesses, but the fact of the matter is these medications do not prevent sicknesses forever. Right? When we got sick, we take a medication, maybe we are temporarily relieved of the pain or the sickness. Well, then it could come back any other time. Okay? So the medications that we take are not the ultimate, if you will, the solutions to our experience of sicknesses. As a matter of fact, we encounter manifold sufferings of all kinds. Suffering could come because of extreme heat, extreme cold, all kinds of sicknesses, and many other issues. And down below, right at the bottom, if you look at all the things going wrong in our life, or possibly could go wrong and drive us crazy and nuts, and it's because there is what we call ignorance. The real source of all the problems we don't want and we encounter. So that's where we need to address the real issue, if you like. We need to address this issue of ignorance. And of course, ignorance is not just one kind again. There are different types of ignorance. And the worst kind of ignorance is what we call, grasping at, self. And that is the worst kind, the fundamental, ignorance. So if grasping at self is the worst form of ignorance, the only way we can get rid of it from our mind is if we realize what is called selflessness, because that realization or the understanding, it completely contradicts the way in which self is perceived by grasping. The two modes of apprehension do not, go well with each other. So once we understand what selflessness is, then we really see through, if you will, the falsity of how the grasping perceives the self to exist. So that's the only way we can challenge our basic fundamental grasping ignorance and knock it out. So the best solution to free ourselves from all kinds of suffering and causes of suffering is to realize selflessness. Okay, that is the panacea, if you will, of all the issues and headaches and problems that we have or we go through life. And then Geshe Bodhava says, realizing impermanence, at the end helps us to realize the nature of ultimate nature of phenomena, which is called suchness. And when we look at the terminology, in Tibetan it's called Chunyi Nyambanyi. Nyambanyi means equal in that nature, that one nature. So we need to understand what that really means. So when we look at realities of phenomena, we can talk about two kinds of realities. There is what we call conventional reality, and then there is the ultimate reality. So, in terms of the ultimate nature, both those realities are just the same. And then we can talk about, duality in many different ways, right? One duality is there's the conventional phenomena and there's ultimate phenomena. But in an ultimate sense, they have the same entity, nature. Now, another duality is there is called samsara, then there is called nirvana. Right? So we can talk about, in some way, nirvana and samsara are equal. Of course, we don't really mean that nirvana is samsara and samsara is nirvana. They are not, you see. So we really need to understand in what sense, in terms of what, X, Y, Z, that we could possibly understand or think nirvana and samsara share some, if you like, common reality or nature.
That is a Koatang Yang Davaniche Niga in a Chuni or Stombani.
No.
Don't but the Chavatan Yamaris.
So in what sense we could possibly think that nirvana and samsara are equal is that the emptiness of samsara and the emptiness of nirvana are just identical, if you will. There is not slightest difference between these two emptinesses.
Then Sanjay the thinking about the Tatami you are in Gavarabas. Thinking in the Sanjay Mingur, Sanjay in the thinking Mingures. Yinaya, Dingy Sanjay the Sanjay thing, Hini about the Chabatan.
So let me give you another duality here. We can talk about a complete enlightened being called Buddha and a completely deluded being called ordinary like us. The difference between us is just sky and the earth, it's just huge. But in terms of emptiness, the emptiness of a Buddha and the emptiness of a deluded person like us is just the same. There is no difference in those two emptinesses. So in terms of that emptiness, we can say Buddha and sentient beings are equal. So once again, I want to emphasize this point. In terms of what we say that Buddha and sentient beings could be, seen as equal, and we are in no way saying that Buddha and sentient beings are equal in all respects. I mean, it's not completely, right? I mean, that's we see Buddha is not sentient being is not Buddha. I mean, there's a huge difference between us. But in terms of what emptiness is, emptiness of a Buddha and emptiness of a deluded sentient being are just the same. And another duality, maybe you, of course, I mean, you can easily relate to is we can talk about, cleanliness and uncleanliness, right? Something that's dirty, something that's very clean, right? Those two things are not same. Dirty is not, clean, and clean is not dirty, But when we look at the ultimate nature of, what is called, cleanliness or uncleanliness, in terms of the emptiness as being the ultimate nature, they are just the same. We cannot say that the emptiness of one is better or higher, superior quality or inferior to the other one. So now, I mean, based upon that understanding or assumption that the emptiness of that which is clean and that which is dirty is just the same, and emptiness is empty after all. Now, if we assume that, well, there is no difference between clean or unclean. I'll just pop anything into my mouth, But that would be a little going too far and crazy, So we don't want to make that mistake. Sometimes, people do teach or preach such things. They say, after all, everything's empty, so who cares, There's no such thing as a dirty or clean or, good or bad or just, do whatever the, don't let me say that thing. But whatever goes, So the point, Geshe is trying to make, here is that people, when they don't understand, at what level we are talking about that all phenomena have the same entity or the nature, and at what level they are very different, then it's, by saying that in terms of emptiness everything is the same, then at another level they also say there's no difference in phenomena. There's no such things as clean or such things as dirty. All of that is a big mistake. And there are those, who make such assumption and take such stand and teach such things. Of course, there are many reasons, valid reasons that we could use to establish, how in terms of the ultimate nature of phenomena, we call shunyata or sunyata or emptiness, all phenomena are same. And there are many good reasons to support that. And for example, Maitreya, in his ornament for clear realizations called Abhisamaya Alankara, in Tibetan, and as Geshe quoted the lines from his memory, in terms of the sphere of ultimate reality or the nature, phenomena have no difference. Okay? And so what we really need to understand is that even though in terms of the ultimate nature, which is to say the way in which phenomena actually exist, what is its final mode of existence? How do phenomena actually exist? In terms of that emptiness, all phenomena are same. But in terms of the basis upon which emptiness is established, in terms of those bases, phenomena are very diverse and they are very different. So because in terms of emptiness all phenomena are same, And so as great Indian master Aryadeva, in his 400 stanzas on the middle way called Chatuksheta or Shibkyaba in Tibetan, said, again Geshe quoted the lines, that if you realize the emptiness of one phenomenon, single phenomenon, you would be able to realize the emptiness of all other phenomena. Why? If you truly realize emptiness of a single phenomenon, by recalling to your mind the reason, why that phenomenon is empty, and now you shift your focus onto other phenomena, you can easily perceive and realize the emptiness of all other phenomena. So, which is tremendously good news, right? If we can realize the emptiness of one phenomena, just shift the focus onto other and recall the reason why that's emptiness, we realize the emptiness of all other phenomena. Otherwise, if the emptiness of every phenomenon is different, then that is going to be very disheartening news, because the phenomena are countless. So when do we ever realize the emptiness of all phenomena? That would be just impossible. We will be chasing the emptiness forever. But that is not the case, because emptiness of all phenomena is just the same. And if we do realize the emptiness of one phenomenon, we would be able to realize the emptiness of all other phenomena.
Chewi dungana so ta tende ta ani be re COVID ni su de ani ta tere ki ta thong go tene thong sa ta tele thabi thabki je de sang ki nge go ta tele thab kare sin ta tong chuni na ba ni to be chuni nya ba ni to be tong ni to be here ran ji she go ba te ani thong go re so ja de to be chuni to ma ni to be thalam be ni so
understanding and realizing impermanence, it really facilitates realizing emptiness. And how is that? So when we understand impermanence of life and things, including death and dying, that helps us to renounce what we call samsara or cyclic existence, develop the aversion to the misery in samsara. When we develop the aversion, we do not want to stay anymore in samsara because we want to get out ASAP, out of samsara. That's as soon as possible. If somebody is saying, I'm speaking Greek here. But, so when, if we want to get out as soon as possible out of samsara, then what is the way to do that? And that's what we see, that we really need to realize emptiness, the ultimate nature of phenomena. Only when we realize that, we could free ourselves, liberate ourselves from the state of samsara. So that's how, realizing impermanence can facilitate. It can lead us to, search for emptiness and realize emptiness.
Geshes.
Geshe Gurupodaba goes on to explain more about the benefits of realizing impermanence, and here he talks about how if we realize what impermanence is, then it really helps us to cut our attachment to this life. Okay? Because our attachment to this life and all the things of this life is a tremendous binding factor. Because this is almost like a rope that kind of binds us, to this life and samsara. So when we realize the impermanence, it started to help us to kind of untie that knot, or to cut off that binding, factor to this life.
That's in the China. Chuba means a canon, Chetan, Tendel Mashabachi Google, Chetan Mataba Gombe, Tendel Chavi Chabba game, Taban of Damdena, the Jay,
As it is stated in elsewhere in a discourse on what we call 4 types of detachment, and where it talks about if we are very much attached to this life, then we are not a Dharma practitioner. See, if we get attached to this life, then we can't be a true Dharma practitioner.
Yani and call a Korean and the she, Yani and the Shawale, that doing a part of Jungun, the Titan, then Delhi Pamatan, Taman do something, somebody share to sugar.
So realizing impermanence, it helps us to cut off our tie or the link, our attachment to this life and the things of this life. But it does more than that. What it really does is it helps us, as I explained earlier, to develop aversion to the life in samsara. Because by understanding that, if I keep on coming back to samsara, right? We are taking rebirth in samsara countless times. How boring and tiring is that, really? You know, you're born, then you grow up, then you die, then you're born, then you die, then you're born. It just keeps on going. There's no end to it, you know. And so that is so tiring and boring. And you started to see that, okay, I need to break this cycle of this delusional rebirth.
Diane, she did a pie, she to military outer was the matter was just a Mendoza in Chevalence is the true yours.
So again, when we talk about being born in samsara and die in samsara, goes on that one. But if it is a case like, you know, we are human being now, which is pretty good, relatively speaking, and then we die and born as a human being, maybe not too bad, you know. Then die as a human being and reborn as a human being. But that's not what it is. We could be reborn as any other forms of life or sentient beings. That's why we talk about 6 types of migrators, you know, 6 types of beings in samsara. So there's no such rule or guarantee say that we will be reborn as a human being and nobody else human being. You know, no, we could be anybody else. So if we have accumulated serious negativity, you know, a negativity of high intensity, and if we have not purified ourselves of that negativity, that's the condition, we have not purified it, then the only, you know, place we will find our rebirth is in the hell.
That big one drink is sayona. When the one drink is sayona, Tai tea and Chevalence at the time, and that was.
And let's say our negativity is not of the high intensity, but it is of the mediocre kind of intensity. And if we have not purified that, that could precipitate our rebirth in the hungry ghost world called Preta.
That big what you sayona, that the Nitas, the Namiti, you must have any to do things.
And let's say our negativity is not of high intensity, not of the middling intensity, but it's of a small kind, if you will. But even then, if we do not purify it, it can precipitate our rebirth in lesser form of animal rebirths.
And it's in the massage the Shavina, that Shaval and said till that Tamara chicken do Sintaya. Yes, you not saying those.
Now let's talk from the positive angle as well. Let's say that we have tried to purify all the negativities we have accumulated in the past lives, and we decided not to accumulate any more negativities in this life. So everything is positive in this case, right? So in which case, we could think about 5 different situations in which we could take rebirth.
So in
other words, through these positive actions, we are able to have positive kind of rebirths in the form of human being, in the form of asuras or the demigod, for lack of better words, in the form of celestial being or the devas and devis,
That they call it calling you see in this area. And of
course, beyond that, the positive actions can free us from samsara for good, and that's even better. And of course, beyond that, they could take us to the state of complete enlightenment, which is the best.
nyonje pang be thabazu thota.
No.
Complete enlightenment marida.
Or making a third issue, no?
Oh, okay.
No, Geshe wants to make a difference, that you understand what is the difference between freedom from samsara and complete enlightenment.
Yeah.
When we talk about nirvana or nibbana, which is we say, now you are free from samsara, what does that really mean is that we have completely abandoned what is called deluded states of mind, delusions in our mind called kleshya. So when we free ourselves completely from all delusions, then we are in the state of nirvana or we are free from samsara.
That divani yorista, when nyondip members are zone, nyondip pangba in the that Timmy's yandy told us that he did the nyondip niga pangba in and the Sanji Komatover was.
But as I often mention and explain to you, that each of us has got two types of mental obscuration. One is called delusion, which seems like one, but it's actually delusions. Okay? And then the other is called obscuration to omniscient wisdom. So now when we free ourselves completely from delusions, then we find what is called nirvana or complete freedom from samsara. And that is often talked about in terms of being an arahat or arahant of Sharvaka Yan or the hearer's vehicle and solitude realizer's vehicle, right? But now if we free ourselves completely from both types of mental obscuration, not only the delusions, but also the obscuration to omniscient wisdom, that's where we become a complete enlightened being or Buddha. Okay, that's the highest, highest state we could achieve.
So
the point I'm trying to make here is, if we meditate on impermanence, it could facilitate, our pursuing the path leading to nirvana and beyond nirvana to complete enlightened state.
Sanji the trade again to the Tebashi, the legend the Tebashi, Jushikres.
And Geshe Bodhaba again goes on to explain that the more benefits of real understanding impermanence. And he said, if we realize impermanence, in the beginning it really helps us to cultivate faith in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It helps us to develop confidence and trust in the infallible working of law of karma and its action, its results.
That temple Tebashi Jushi. That part of Karashikas, Jundu Zombie Jushis, Gewala, ne, take it the Zembe, and that Jundu Shi, Jundu Rangi Jushik,
and also it realizing impermanence in the middle could help us to develop enthusiasm in cultivating spiritual practice. And enthusiasm is defined in Buddhism as a state of mind that takes delight in spiritual practice. You are really happy about spiritual practice. It's not like somebody is forcing you to do that. And that kind of enthusiasm, it comes out of understanding impermanence.
That Tama the courage, Hirashi Jushis, Hira Dalta. Here Mambo that here Mataba Tobi Sherita, and Tomani Tobi Shere, and the legendary Tobi, that here Tab here Mambo here, the Jushegris.
And realizing impermanence could lead to cultivating all different types of wisdom. Wisdom that understands or realizes what impermanence is, of course. Wisdom that realizes law of cause and effect. Wisdom that realizes emptiness. Yes.
That the Bumbo that only to him Mataba Gomnati, pay the pay Jackim, have a soon the gorgeous and the Yanni and soon is on the West.
Yes. So, of course, there are many benefits that could come from realizing what impermanence is. Sometimes we might think like, oh, he's just repeating himself here, but that's really not the case. Yes.
Yeah, Mataban the Gom King Jula Shenas, eta Gomni, Jula Shepa Yinas, Tambo Chu Jushis. Che Maduki in it, Chewa Matabaji Gom Netishenta, Che Tambu Maduki in it, Chewa Matabaji Gom Julius Shebina, Che Toyalata, only Jushigris.
So Geshe Bodhaba goes on to explain that, understanding impermanence could motivate someone to search for spirituality or dharma. Let's assume that somebody has no interest whatsoever in spirituality and dharma. It means nothing. But because of this understanding of impermanence, it could really activate interest in a person to search for spirituality.
But the children be Geshes.
And then in the middle, it really motivates the person to engage in the practice, not just look for it, but to follow it, to do the practice. And then at the end, it helps him or her to complete the spiritual journey or the practice. I think completing spiritual practice is very important. We may start off our practice, but if we kind of drop the ball, so to speak, in the middle somewhere, then we will not succeed in any way. So once we start our practice, it's very important to see that we bring it to the fruition state, to the completion stage.
당보 고시 전주 좀비 주시스 고시 더 전주들 고시 전주서다 아니 저외 전주서다 아니 심모도베 전주서다 인데 그 숨도스 당보도 고시 전주 아니 저외 전주 아니 탐 셔모도베 전주스 전주 숨셰 다 당보도 아니 그래서 마다바도 검기 줄이 셰바이나 당보 고시 전주 좀비 주시스 고시 진짜니 바다레네 만들어진 저번에 최고 좀 회시에 그 이거로 봐. 다시. 나 이거 거기 전에서도 최저열다. 최저열다. 로호시죠. 로호시네. 거기 나 이거 배 로호시죠. 시그리스.
And Geshe Potapa goes on to explain how understanding impermanence can lead to cultivating different levels of enthusiasm, if you will, enthusiastic effort. That is what we call the armor-like enthusiasm. Goche Chunju in Tibetan, armor-like, putting on the armor. Okay, and so the metaphor here is that if you go into the battlefield and if you are wearing a good armor, you are protected in many ways, right? So in the same way, that in order for us to be able to practice Dharma, we need the courage. Okay, and understanding impermanence helps us to develop that courage to engage in the spiritual practice. So the armor-like enthusiasm has to do with that whatever difficulties we face, challenges, we are going to, we are going to pursue our practice and not going to be bogged down by the difficulties because we have that courage, to move on. And understanding impermanence also helps us to maintain our enthusiasm in the application. The application part here is to do with the practice, right? So we develop, in other words, the consistency in our practice. It's not like, 1 or 2 days, we are so enthusiastic, and then, everything just stops. Or that 1 or 2 weeks, we are overly enthusiastic, excited, and then drops, Not that. We develop the consistency in the application part, which is doing our practice. And then, at certain stage, that real understanding impermanence can help us to develop the level of enthusiasm, which is called irreversible. Now, nobody can really stop, us from being enthusiastic in the pursuit of our practice and the spiritual journey. You said nothing in the world can really change our mind or stop us from anything. It's almost like we reach a stage, it's a no return. We are not going to go back, to the square one. We are just going to move forward. And so it's an irreversible stage. So I would like to stop there today, and once again, I just want to remind all of ourselves that how fortunate we are to have found this precious human life, which is endowed with freedoms and enriching factors. In Tibetan called Tenzin Dorjee. It's the human life that is characterized by freedoms and enriching factors. So this is a very wonderful life, but we also have to realize this wonderful life is also very transient and impermanent. Okay, it's not going to stay forever. So our life will definitely come to an end one day, and there's nothing mystery about it. There's nothing to debate about it or talk about it, fight over it. It is sure to happen. But again, the difficult part for us is we don't know when that is going to happen. So the time of death is uncertain, and that's why we have to be more vigilant in our study and practice of Dharma, because we don't know when this life will snap. And so we really have to develop that sense of enthusiasm and motivate ourselves to engage in our study and practice, and don't waste our time. What happens with many people is that maybe they are blessed with many more resources. In other words, got a lot of money and wealth, bank balance, and maybe they have got the power positions, and this become obstacle in many ways, that they are very much attached to their resources and positions, and they just have to maintain and whatever do to keep all those things going.
That in the any soon at the Tagua Maris, Salasam never the Tangus, then the jogging to Canandos, Toa needs and bring to Scambe new changes. But Tobo Canditina, Pinjodinta, or Tobo Canditina, and it's ever similar Gamba new beta, Teotri Joyakata, Yorvas, Sigurvas.
So the point I'm trying to make is that, we could be one of them with a lot of resources and a lot of power positions, or maybe we might have them. But whatever happens, we really have to tell ourselves and remind ourselves that any of those things could change and we could lose them. Okay, nothing is fixed. We could become rich, but that doesn't mean we will be rich forever. Things could change, in no minute. Or we could have a lot of power positions, but we can, lose it any time. So we have to remind ourselves that, in one way, it's not bad to have them, but not to get attached to them and then waste all our life. As great first the Dalai Lama, Gyaltsen Kindudub, said in his very spiritual poem, very profound and very touching and moving, which unfortunately I cannot replicate in the English on the spot, that too. But as Geshe-la was, reciting the lines, so basically the first Dalai Lama was telling us, he said, we have to see the essencelessness of even the high positions. Somebody could go to the topmost level, but when your life changes, say when you die, in the next life, you don't know where you will be. Somebody who has the highest level, in the next life, due to bad karmas, could be reborn as a slave or in a slavery conditions. Okay? All those things are possible.
Useful in that, Zoo Zambutan, that and they get and the temple yamas. Doing duty tag, method, three hours, sunny, say, chenny, solid sayakata, Saluar, the Hakuger, the Nangiriskan.
And the great the Dalai Lama, Gendundu, the first Dalai Lama, goes on in his spiritual poems that some people, maybe it's not so much the resource and the power they have, but it's the youth and the beauty that they have. That, everybody just kind of, wants to be like them. They're so beautiful, so young, and so, youthful. But they must also understand that it has a time limit. Nobody stays youth and beautiful forever. So the example he gives is it's just like the flower which blooms at the end of the fall, or we call autumn, right, in the British English. So then, something happens and the flower dies. Okay? So the youth and the beauty are also, something that can change anytime. So there's no point getting attached to it so much. And then also, just getting too much attached with all the wealth and resources one has. Again, there is no point in doing that when we really think deeply. It is almost as if we have borrowed jewelry from some rich people and we are wearing it for a day or two. Because after all, those jewelry need to be returned. So when the life snaps, everything just stops here. You can't carry any of those things. So we really need all of us to orient our way of thinking to understand all those things. The essencelessness of getting attached to resources, wealth, power positions, youth and attractiveness, etc. So by orienting our way of thinking that way, what our really whole purpose of doing that is that we bring our interest and our energy to do our spiritual practice. So I already said, right, we're going to stop there today. And we have some prayer requests, and I have one announcement. I'll do the prayer request first. Prayers are requested for Rosie Long Koo, 70 years old, passed away. And prayers for Audrey McKenzie, passed away. Prayers requested for Alan Rosenberg, has been dealing with health complications, and it has been in and out of hospital. And kind of interesting, it says dependent arising. Maybe think about that. And the announcement is the Tibetan New Year is coming up soon on February 7th, Thursday. And as we always do, most of you know that at early morning at 7, we will have a very simple ceremony here. We come together and wish everybody Happy New Year and long life to Geshe-la and long life to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And everybody is welcome, and a light breakfast will be served. And I believe this is a working day, and usually we go to school and go to work after the breakfast. Yeah. So, no. Okay, salah pa zindo yorbe. Salah pa zindo yorbe. Wednesday, teaching, Geshe-la will teach. Okay.
Tangaran samaloke, ta gri, chujin shibi give us all at town. Muaji Shegures, Muaji Karesana, 2000, and Church give us all at any Sanji temperament during the Nabata. And a Jawi Yin of Chebe, then the Shiva Taman could have a temple to the Memildo Yomata. And a church drinking and a show Pomanaji 20 Shavana, each Sambata and Rubata. And a Jiteja come that again to Mintibi Gusota the Hini, 20 Futada, Memildo Yomata.
As you all know that it's important for us to dedicate our positive energy or merit at the end of the teaching and practice. So we dedicate our merit for the flourishing of Dharma, the source of benefits and happiness throughout the universe. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other holy beings, wherever they are, in any part of the universe, live long and be successful in fulfilling their visions benefiting sentient beings. May spiritual communities throughout the world and spiritual practitioners from all traditions remain healthy, harmonious, and be successful in fulfilling their spiritual aspirations. May this and other world environments be free of all kinds of unwanted pains and problems, and beings find peace, happiness, prosperity, and spirituality. Last but not least, we dedicate our collective merit, positive karma, for all kind mother sentient beings, and including ourselves, to be free from delusions and obscuration to omniscient state, and may we all reach complete enlightened state quickly. We need to recite some Avalokiteshvara mantra for those who passed away, and
Thank you.